All right, everyone, one of Trump's main talking points is that all of the worst cities in the U.S. for crime are run by Democrats. The Washington Post very unwisely decided to try to fact-check this. We rate this totally false because it's not true. So I'm going to show you something. Link in the description, archived of course, although I have no problem with this particular Twitter user. It's, things tend to disappear on Twitter because Twitter likes to purge people who post things that are unkind to the left. And keep in mind, the Wapo actually deleted the tweet linking to this story. Now, here's their little fact sheet. You can follow along with me. The civics class is now in session. And here's their little write-up. Most of the current mayors of these cities are Democrats, proving the point. 2 of the mayors of cities with the most reported violent crimes overall, though, are independents, and 1, the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida, is a Republican. Among the 20 cities with the most violent crime per capita, 1 isn't a Democrat, the independent mayor of Springfield, Missouri. They literally prove Trump's point. 1 Republican out of 20 cities, according to only one, and largely meaningless, metric of crime is not a compelling argument. These are lists of 20 cities. The first list there shows the actual crime rate, but if you adjust for population, you get a different list, of course. There's a big population difference between Memphis and Chicago, for example, so you got to adjust things. All of the top 10 cities by absolute totals are run by Democrats. Literally the top 10. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, Memphis, Detroit, Dallas, Phoenix, and Baltimore. The top 10 cities for crime overall, all run by Democrats. Going down to the next chart, the top 4 are all run by Democrats. Memphis, St. Louis, Detroit, and Baltimore. Springfield, Missouri is number 5, and then the rest are all run by Democrats too. It's solid blue, dude. What more proof do you need that Trump's comments are fundamentally true? Trump should come out tomorrow just to ridicule the Washington Post. He should say, of the top 20 cities for violent crime, 19 are run by Democrats. Be just about as compelling. But it's also more wordsmithy, and that doesn't tend to be what Trump exactly is interested in doing, which is exactly why he shortens it up to the shorthand version, which is that all of them are run by Democrats. Well, basically so. 1 city out of 20, again, is not a particularly high total. Now, of course, we have to understand that cities tend to be run by the left anyway, larger cities. True metro zones, as opposed to like a small city, like something like Rutland. A little bit different. It doesn't even really count on a national scale as a city. It's really small town America. When you get into the larger cities, they tend to have more centrality because they tend to have a higher population density. They tend to be more diverse. It's less diverse in some cases, but the right kind of non-diversity to appease the left. It's funny because they literally have accepted non-diversity in some of these places like Flint. It's not actually that diverse. I think it's racially getting close to homogenous, isn't it? I know Detroit is almost racially homogenous in most zones, but it's still diverse because, reasons. It's really funny how that works. Yeah, it's a clank day. Anyway, the Wapo accidentally proved the point, and then they rage quit. They deleted the tweet. You can't. That's why I used this one and archived it, because things tend to disappear. When the legacy media puts out a story that is blatantly untrue, factually completely wrong, like this, where they're claiming Trump is wrong while proving him right simultaneously, they get egg on their face. And then they try to do this like on Twitter and in these echo chambers, and they still end up losing. And this shows, I think, in part, Americans' ire towards the legacy media at large. And the power of independent content creators. If you have a large audience capable of generating a lot of attention for a thing, you can actually get the legacy media to recant. Now, of course, they won't fact-check themselves. They won't truly recant the story and say, by the way, we posted something inaccurate the other day. We posted that Trump was wrong and mean and an orange bigot, but actually our own fact sheet showed that what he was saying was fundamentally true. At the very least, if you were to fact-check this in a fair way, you'd have to say mostly true. Top 20 cities, 19 run by Democrats if you're looking at per capita, 17 if you're looking at absolute totals. Okay, well, that's most of them. You can split hairs and say, well, no, Jacksonville exists, therefore Trump is a pants-on-fire, total weenie liar. But that's not the way most people, I think, would see it. The Washington Post really is a propaganda outlet. And just think, despite the fact that Wapo is owned by the heavily leftist-tilting Amazon, and despite the fact that they have severe Trump derangement syndrome, they wouldn't even, in my estimation, be on the top 5 list for propaganda outlets. The Atlantic takes the #1 spot with the Wall Street Journal close behind. Then you get a cluster of groups like HuffPost, Salon, CNN, certainly Slate, and some of these others. I don't even know that Wapo would make the top 10. Fair and balanced compared to the Huffington Post. It's sort of like saying, well, Breitbart is accurate reporting because they've got a better track record than most of the pundits on Fox. It's not saying much now, is it? I always find it funny when people want me to suck Tucker Carlson's dick and stuff like that. They're like, well, you should like this dude. He's pretty based. You got to understand, #1, he's my competitor. #2, he is part of that multimillionaire urban class. The fact that he seems to be more level-headed at times than other people. Look, we've seen this a million times before. People kept saying how level-headed and great Ann Coulter was, and now over the last year that she's gone off a cliff. And she's got severe Trump derangement syndrome because Trump hasn't deported 20 million people while ignoring the Constitution. That fact, now she's not based anymore. Now she's just a whining, complaining Karen, which was always the case. But a lot of these people, they had to observe that for a long period before they changed their minds. Make no doubt, Tucker Carlson will eventually take a large check from some organization or be threatened enough so that he'll start singing a different tune, because this is how you control people. You get them addicted to that money, and then when they really need it, you threaten them, basically. They do this to content creators through corporate contracts, a reason I would never sign one. And then you lean on them to change their material. It's not even really selling out. At some point, it becomes a matter of a person's basically life or death. At least the life they've grown accustomed to. If you get a person rich, then oftentimes their spending just keeps up with their income anyway, and they become totally reliant. They don't save, they don't plan ahead. It's really funny how so many people do this, and then they wonder, well, why did this person was so edgy 20 years ago? They've totally cleaned up and they're not fun anymore. That's because they needed to. It's because they realized that the paradigm shifted, and then corporations leaned on them and said, hey, we're going to cut the sponsorship ties if you don't do what we say. They did this to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley at first was very libertarian because they weren't reliant upon these contracts, and the companies hadn't yet figured out how powerful the internet would get. Now they use, in the 20 years on, they use their sponsorship power to lean on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and stuff to deplatform people that they don't like. And they do it for monetary reasons. It's not even part of a larger fucking political struggle. People always get stuck on that illusion. It's a facade, dude. That's a facade to keep half the population from caring by labeling it far-right extremism. And the conservatives are a bunch of cowards anyway, so they're not going to defend one another, even if they know the claim is false. Happens all the time. So yeah, the Wapo accurate reporting, their graphs are correct. It's just that it shows that Trump is absolutely undeniably 100% correct. Well, actually, technically 95% correct. Let's get it right. 100% correct on the other metric, though. And I would think that when you adjust by population, that's definitely more meaningful. The actual crime rate per resident matters more than the total crime rate. Again, there's a huge difference between New York City. They're like, what, 15 million people in the New York metro area. How many people live in Memphis? And Detroit at this point, it has a fraction of its former population. It's under 1 million people. It's no longer, I think, on the list of top 10 U.S. cities by population, if I remember correctly, or only just barely. I can remember back when I was a kid, if you looked in facts and figures, it was like still number 6. They've fallen off a cliff multiple times since then. That's about all. Peace out.